Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, initiates. Welcome, adepts. Welcome, all of you who know that it is your time to serve during this historic time of change and transition on our planet. I invite you to feel the energies of Sedona as we overlook Cathedral Rock and we are basking in its presence. And you are beginning to sense and feel the energy transmission that is increasingly becoming ever more potent. And so join me in aligning, dear ones, in opening your hearts, in coming in to the divine embrace, receiving the divine nectar of love, of light, of Christ consciousness, the holy light of the Christ prototype, the holy light of the cosmic Christ presence, the light of the Atma, the light of oneness, the light of unity. And so my message today is a message from the entire spiritual hierarchy of enlightened beings, which I am so pleased to assure you includes living rishis such as myself and the increasing phenomena of enlightenment beginning to flower all over the world. And so as I begin my talk today, my transmission of grace and divine presence, I invite you to be aware of all of the great masters, all of the guides that have watched over humanity, that have watched over you as a soul. And I invite you to join us. Increasingly here on this planet, we are becoming the fellowship of enlightened souls. As I begin also to offer wisdom and insight on things like conspiracy theories, things like COVID virus and pandemics, things like earth changes and catastrophic turmoil on this planet, I ask that you open your hearts, dear ones, to become one with us, to know your true self in the embrace of Christ consciousness. And the Holy Spirit of all things that are Christ, all things that are the unity, that are the unified soul. And through that unity, dear ones, becomes the inner governance of the divine order that this planet so greatly needs. So can you not appreciate, invoke and celebrate that it is our inner governance of Christ consciousness radiated out unto the world, unto all souls without exception, that will prevail to achieve a grand tipping point of an amassing of light, a great amassing of light, as your inner governance of divine order, the beauty and harmony of Christ consciousness, becomes shining like a sun, like a great solar golden disk from your heart. And it is this that humanity cries for, longs for, thirsts for, truly. And as our collective inner governance comes into divine order, that is the ever-perfecting perfection, an evolving evolution, an evolving, perfecting, dear ones, that will cause the great changes amongst the nations of the world, that the suffering and the downtrodden so wretchedly need and deserve and have waited thousands upon thousands of years simply to be able to no longer fear other human beings, to no longer fear and mistrust our fellow human beings, to no longer have to fear members of our own species, dear ones. And so as you align in your light, your centering, your pillar of light, your divine alignment, and you bring an intensity to your own presence, to your alignment, to your intentions, your prayers, your very being in its truest authenticity. It is here that we gather together in the fellowship of enlightened beings all over the world. And as we are radiating collective Christ consciousness, collective oneness, as we are radiating unity consciousness, you can see that each and every moment that we are in the remembrance of the unity everlasting, that is one of the 12 jewels of God consciousness, so too are we bringing light to the outer governance by which the nations of the world will one day come together in the great federation of the United Nations for Peace on Earth. And so as a visionary, as a clairvoyant since birth, as a solar Rishi who has been sent in and who has been issued forth the power of the clarion call, as I send forth that clarion call to all of you who are watching and receiving this transmission, and who will also know that it is time to share this level of unity consciousness with as many souls as you possibly can. It is here that I put forth my clarion call to the destiny souls of the world. And so many of you have identified yourself perhaps as teachers, as healers, as leaders, as light bearers, as light workers, as emissaries, as messengers, as starborn, as members of the 144,000, whose awakening will indeed create the tipping point of Christ consciousness for this planet. But to those whom I call to initiate ascension are those whom I also call to be duty bound. Dear ones, duty bound. To assuring that your own inner governance of the right balance of all the divine qualities that are the very light within the inner sanctum of your heart, that 12 ray, 12 jewel principle from which the Christ prototype for this universe has always sourced its great outpouring. And so I issue forth this call for inner governance unto the destiny souls, whom I am also calling to Sedona, who I'm also calling to be part of the era of enlightened community, enlightened family, enlightened group formation. The deep inner work of laying down ego, of letting go of defenses, of letting the walls come down everywhere, and merely the purity of your naked heart be that essence that we share with one another. The principles of kindness, of caring, of putting others before oneself. For as you all already know deep within, the eye of the needle through which the soul must pass to attain the enlightenment which is merely just beginning of one's own mastery, is the reality of selflessness. And so as I begin to call you into that selflessness, that is what gives birth to unity consciousness. That is what makes your vessel, your body, your life a chalice for Christ consciousness. And that is what anchors you in an unwavering wisdom that will see you through the coming years of trial and tribulation. For this pandemic that we are experiencing, which I think I can rightly proclaim has touched every nation without exception. And if you but appreciate why that has been so essential, and why this pandemic is understood by the great masters and guides as the second of 3 world events, all of which I have prophesied for some 20, 30 years now. The fact that no nation is untouched is the singular focus now that has caused the battle cries of division, the fears and the doubts and the mistrust, that has turned one brother against another, that has turned the people's of our nation here in the United States against one another, but it is also the very thing that has been the impetus, if you will, for those of you who are genuinely holding steady unto the light, who are remaining true to the principles of unity consciousness no matter what, and for whom compassion shines upon one and all without exception. And it is that love and that compassion and that wisdom that governs and informs your choices. And so join again in the unity of the one heart, in unity consciousness itself, and the absolute oneness that is the reality of this cosmos, and is the essence of godliness from which the Christ prototypes have been seeded throughout our universe. For the time comes, O dear ones, that our planet shall be visited by our celestial star mothers and star fathers. And the wild stories of conspiracies and negative aliens and deep state and cabals and all of this sort of, shall I say, distraction will become a thing of the past. And it will literally, all this clamor, all this fury, all this confusion, all this mistrust will become virtually irrelevant. 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 And all of the clamor and all the noise and all the conflict will come into an astounding awareness of what this planet truly is, of what this human race was created and seeded to become. And that becoming is already in a flowering. And if my life example, my presence as Rishi in residence here in Sedona might have any bearing at all on your understanding, may I assure you that enlightenment has begun all over the world. And the coming together of enlightened communities, dear ones, has also begun. And not only the coming together of enlightened communities, my dearest beloveds, but also the new era of enlightened enterprise. How we deal with money, how we deal with the stewardship of companies and businesses. And I will not use the word ownership of companies or corporations or businesses, but rather I will use the word the stewardship of the collectives of peoples that come together to attain a purpose, whatever the industry or enterprise or endeavor might be. Enlightened enterprise. And the governance of enlightened enterprise that begins with the inner governance of selflessness. So imagine, if you will, because it has already been seeded into the very DNA the molecular nature of destiny souls. And the destiny souls about whom I speak are 1,200 in number. And so it is my greatest empowering emanation that this transmission teaching, this darshan, this talk, find its way into the sight and hearing and knowing and listening of all 1,200 destiny souls on this planet. And so feel the transmission from all the great masters, the ascended masters, the fellowship of enlightened beings, the living rishis, the 7 rishis, of which I am but one on this planet. As we send forth this emanation to quicken the awakening of the 1,200 destiny souls, and that this emanation of love, this clarion call for the cure for disunity, the cure for illness, the cure for imbalance, the cure for ignorance, the cure of mistrust and the fear-mongering, and the feeding on the fear-mongering, for the worst of the worst, to use fear to empower oneself, to use fear, the manipulation of fear, to gain power over others, to gain aggrandizement for oneself. For there is no glory in the heavens or on earth for such a thing. There's none. And so again, my message of light today is very soon we will welcome benevolent ancestors. These are not strangers to our planet. They indeed are our past as well as our future. For in the multidimensional nature of this universe, all is existent simultaneously in the ever-perfecting perfection you see. That is the great orb of each cosmic day that encompasses expanses of time beyond the comprehension, certainly, of myself, beyond the comprehension of the greatest geniuses that have ever been born or are yet to be born on this planet. And so you see the divine plan and the power of the plan and the power of the great masters and the guides and the power of the holy and solely ones that ensoul cosmos, that ensoul universes, that ensoul stars, that ensoul planets, dear ones, is so far beyond the petty noise and clamor of conspiracy theories, are so far beyond the stories about cabals and dark forces and deep state. These things, I assure you, are paltry in the power of the divine plan. They are paltry nonsense unto the omniscience of the will of the divine and its benevolence of creatorship and and therefore the endowments of that creatorship unto all 1,200 destiny souls. And so as I speak of the destiny souls who will bring solution to the ills of the world, the 1,200, my dearest ones, who will be the leaders of heart, of wisdom, of humanity, of compassion, of inclusion, of unity consciousness. That the awakening and the endowments of creatorship over the coming 7 years will surpass in its amassing of light all the amassing of darkness that could possibly be fathomed or imagined. For it is an absolute that a single enlightened soul counteracts the negativity of countless millions. A single enlightened soul counteracts the negativity of countless millions, of countless millions. And so my message of hope and love and wisdom and prophecy is to awaken you that you spend not another moment of your power of time and attention and focus on the paltry noisiness of the clamor of mistrust, the glamour of those things, or addiction to those things. So you see those sensational tabloid-like sayings. They come with a pall, a glamour. The glamour of being in the know, you see. The glamour of knowing what others do not know. But the fear that it is based upon, the mistrust that it is rooted in, is not discernment. It is not sovereignty. It is not higher knowing. And this is my message today to all who will hear it, regarding the fallacy and the superficial nature of all of the conspiracy theories, and everyone who would utter this profanity on this planet when in the presence of the great love of the divine, when in the light of Christ consciousness itself, when in the omnipresence of the will of God, and that fiery nature, and all of us who are the masters and guides who watch o'er this planet, who are bestowing light and wisdom and sacred knowledge upon tens and hundreds of thousands of souls on a daily basis. This is my focus. Every day, every hour. My focus, my service, my love. It is unwavering. It is constant. And it is fully joined in the oneness with the great fellowship of enlightened beings, which is ever increasing in numbers, even as this transmission is broadcast and shared with all of you. Yet another soul has flowered their enlightenment on this planet, and their enlightenment has counteracted the negativity of many millions. And even as the light amasses and increases, and we are shifting from a third dimensional reality to a Christ consciousness reality. And dear ones, particularly those of you who join me here in Sedona, who receive my clarion call to come and make a difference in this city of light, this new Rishikesh of the West. So too are you enjoining in the potential, dear ones, to not only have Christ conscious community, unity consciousness amongst us all in this glorious city of light, but to also attain the seventh round for this planet. Seventh dimensional consciousness, dear ones, Shambhala consciousness. For the great presence of the crystal reality of Shambhala consciousness is now overarching the whole of Sedona, you see. And we began this work, oh dear ones, with the harmonic convergence of 1987. And that upon my presence in Sedona, over 3 decades ago now, so too have we continued the focus on the crystal citadel of the Shambhala of the West, which is in activation above Sedona and will rapidly continue to create a purification. And so it is the purification that I must also speak about. Because for a while yet, the increase of light will cause the exposure of darkness. It will cause the exposure of deception, of falsehood, of secret manipulation, dear ones. And so whether I speak of the community of Sedona, or the state of Arizona, or the country of the United States, or whether I speak of the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, or whether I speak of all the continents that comprise our earthly existence, for a while, the increase of light will stimulate and cause a rising up of the dark side of ego, but it will steadily expose and it will steadily separate the wheat from the shaft. It will steadily draw the line of the great decision between the right-hand path of divine evolution, conscious evolution, the choice for accelerated awakening, the choice for accelerated personal accountability, and the left-hand path of involution, wherein denial and falsehood continues that counterclockwise spiral, you see, into deeper and deeper karmic lessons, more and more rapid and more severe mirrors of reflection, much of which are increasingly becoming immediate. And so if you find yourself knowing that you are here to make a difference, knowing that you are here as a steward, as a guardian, a global guardian of this planet, know that in your heart of hearts, you are here to serve. That you are here to serve. Know that it is your light, ultimately, and your decision to purify, to waste no time pointing the finger at others. Waste no breath on blaming others. Waste no time on lashing out on perceived enemies, because this Rishi, this divine mother, this humble grandmother, this very humble great grandmother, who have seen decades of accelerated awakening, that one must always go within when the arising of mistrust occurs, because it is through that inner healing, that inner responsibility, that inner accountability within one's self, that we ultimately find our way through this pandemic, you see, to become at last all-inclusive. Because when I brought through the predictions in 2018 that this COVID pandemic would leave no nation unaffected, I also brought through the prediction that although the United States would be put on her knees and her financial strength would be rendered impotent, as a military power of the world, that power would become irrelevant in the face of a virus that feeds on disunity, that gradually, as suffering and strife strikes at the heart of every family and community, and that no community is unscathed, you see, that at last the inner accountability for one's own inner governance, to become rooted in unity consciousness, to be informed by Christ's light and Christ's love, that one's very life becomes a vessel for the great Christ presence, you see. And so if my wisdom can at all ring bells of knowing, can touch you deeply, and to that which already lives within you, within your knowing, within your remembrance, within your own deepest presence of self. Because as we clean house, all of us, most especially the 1,200, and very much so the 144,000, and very much so all of us together who seek to serve, who know that we are here to serve, who know that it is time to rise and be counted, and put the divisiveness, the cluelessness, the deception, the self-denial, all of those child's toys away. That our spiritual maturity might at last flower o'er the land, and that wisdom is flowing even from the mouths of babes, and the great overlighting of the ensouling beings of universes and stars and planets is the collective consciousness that the people of Earth are literally being bathed in. And with so much talk, particularly in New Age communities, using references that are very difficult to discern and understand in terms of a global populace, shall we simplify it by saying, Earth and her peoples are being blanketed in benevolence, in the love of God, in the collective consciousness of the unity of all ensouling beings that are, in fact, in absolute reality, on the right-hand path of divine evolution, are in the ever-perfecting brilliance of conscious evolution. And when it's a consciously involving peoples and a consciously evolving peoples that is inclusive in its service to all, it is there that you will find the divine order. It is there you will find the goodness and the caring and the kindness and the attention and the focus and the sensitivity, dear ones, the sensitivity to the suffering of others. And that sensitivity to your own innermost humanity, that as you take care of the divine order inside of yourself, as you take responsibility to heal the falsehood within yourself, because with every defense you will find an untruth, for truth needs no defense. And if you are abiding in truth, dear ones, it is there that at last the walls come down, and there is no need for a human being to defend itself against another human being. And the very distribution of that falsehood is what I so joyously proclaim will be falling into a paltry insignificance within a very short several year period of time. For increasingly, benevolence will be bathing on the planet. And even though, dear ones, for a time, a rising up of mistrust, a rising up of the seeds of darkness will also take place side by side with the increase of light and the flowering of enlightenment that is happening in pockets all over the world, in what we have called perhaps the safe zones or the cities of light that have been seeded to herald the new era of enlightenment for the human race. Sedona being one designated epicenter for not only enlightenment, for the grace of service leadership and the new era of enlightened enterprise. And from that new governance of enlightened selfless stewardship of our enterprises, our human exchange, therefore also the outpouring of world service is the natural, effortless, unstoppable wave of transformation that will be a crescendo over the face of this earth. And you can feel the certainty from which I speak. And as I bring forth the great light that is bathing this planet as I speak, so too is the most certainty, the absolute truth, wherein the fiery will of God is known And unto that we, as the fellowship of enlightened masters, do bow thee down. And through our bowing thee down, in humble sacrifice and service to one another, in our bowing thee down, in humility unto one another, you see, thereby our oneness is absolute. Our oneness is absolute. And so I wish to continue this transmission. I wish to give you deep sacred space, your sacred space, your penetration, your permeation with inside yourself, for this is a changing moment for humanity. The absolute certainty of the fiery will of God is known, and we are the stewards of that all-loving benevolence. And the unity everlasting. Oh, dear ones, oh, destiny souls, oh, you who will lead the way to 1,000 golden years of peace on earth, and the rising up of the Federation of the United Nations for the peace on earth. For I will be sending out the clarion call to the leaders of the world, the leaders of enterprise, the leaders wherever they might be found, those who know that you have a destiny to stand and be counted, to do what's right, to do what's loving, to do what's merciful, to do what's compassionate. We need not be concerned with the naysayers and the noise of conspiracy theories. Withdraw your hearts from such nonsense. It is going to merely cave in on itself. It will dissipate. It will cease to have relevance. Thus is the power of the plan omniscient as the divine within all things, within all things. Be now in your light of heart to allow this transmission to permeate deep within your core memory. Breathe, all of us, together, and know that our day has come. And from this moment in time, a great transmission is moving o'er the course of the realities, that no stone be unturned, that all receptive hearts receive the love of God, that all receptive hearts receive the light of the fellowship of masters, who are not withdrawing during humanity's greatest hour of need, but who are strengthening in our momentum, our unity, our love, and our service. And so feel our tenderness for humanity, our great hope for humanity, our most certainty for the rising light of Christ consciousness, the rising light of unity consciousness, the rising light of Shambhala consciousness, the seventh wheel of this planet in manifestation. As I sit here, basking in the presence of Cathedral Rock of Sedona, thus it has begun. The seventh wheel of Shambhala consciousness has begun. It has begun. It has begun. It has begun, oh dear ones. It has begun. Receive the transmission of grace into your innermost being. And to discover the breath of awakening is to discover the bellows of this cosmos. The great waxing and waning of each cosmic day and each cosmic night. To restore the rhythm of the heavens within oneself, within one's breath, within one's heartbeat, within the innermost radiance that is your core being. Deepen and expand upon the wings of love and joy and purpose. Let your fears and doubts and misgivings be melting away. Melting away. For what I also will share with you today is that the presence of godliness in our cosmos and our universe is unceasing in the unity everlasting. And we are not merely blessed with the sun in our heavens that shines upon this earth, one and all souls without exception, all beings without exception, every blade of grass, every grain of sand without exception. And yet that fiery nucleus of a star is also ensouled. No different than we ensoul our bodies. And so the transmission from the divine presence of Helios, our sun, is also moving through in its penetration into your heart of hearts, that this solar transmission enter your own solar heart. For we are of this great sun that we see in our heavens, around which our planet orbits. And so you see that grand star that we call our sun is ensouled by a divine presence, long referred to as the Lord Helios. Mother, Father, Light. Mother, Father, Alpha and Omega. And so as you feel the great presence of Helios overlighting you, literally overlighting our planet, the power of the divine and the divine plan itself is not merely reduced to what you can see with the physical eye. This is the miracle that is always working, that is always the unseen power of the divine, you see. O Helios, O Helios, you are the divine presence that is bathing humanity and all things on earth. All things on earth in a divine remembrance that is waking up all the light codes, not only within the 144,000, not only within the uncountable good souls of good faith and goodwill on this planet. Oh, dear ones, but also the 1,200 destiny souls for whom this transmission is most powerfully signaling, coding, permeating to awaken. O people of earth, we are ensouled by the divine presence of our sun. Therefore, as you register in your mind's eye the sheer scale and size of our solar Helios, it is there that you will find right proportion to that which comes and goes. Even those 3 world events and that which causes nations to fall on their knees and to at last become humble, to become sensible, to have divine order restored, which provides the holy endowment of the divine birthright of all souls on this planet, all beings, without exception, all kingdoms, the divine birthright of love and wisdom and benevolence. Let no child go unfed. Let no family go unsheltered. Let no community go without the well-being of thriving health and well-being. Let all souls, without exception, have access to the opportunity. For what I will share with you is that just as our universe was seeded from the dark cosmic night to emerge into its own cosmic day, as the unity between the unfathomable diversity and the incomprehensible oneness, so too is our planet Earth, seeded to attain an unfathomable diversity. It also dwells an incomprehensible unity that assures that sovereignty prevails in the midst of diversity, and that diversity prevails through the honoring of the birthright of sovereignty. And so you see, we need not clamor and fight. We need only to discover and proclaim our birthright inside of ourselves from the certainty of our own revelation, the certainty of our inner realization, the certainty of the knowing that the great self within is the one self within all beings. All beings without exception. And continuing, dear ones, deepen, meditate, expand, contemplate. Contemplate and contemplate and contemplate. Continue your Omni meditation and let it truly become an Omni awakening. The fellowship of enlightened beings all over the world is rising, and the unstoppable tide of transformation, of love, of stewardship, kindness and caring. O peoples of earth, O future generations, you are blessed with the divine plan, and you are blessed with the benevolence of your divine birthright, for this is a most certainty that we give our lives, our presences, every moment of every day to assure and to make manifest, dear ones, to make manifest, to make manifest. of enlightenment has begun. Unity consciousness will prevail. Balance will be restored. The balance that begins within and makes manifest the balance without, you see. Feel the gratitude. The deep gratitude. The most certainty. The absolute certainty that the divine plan will prevail upon earth. That the divine birthright for all human beings will be restored. And that, yes, transformation and purification can indeed occur from the defenselessness of humility and the commitment to service and the knowing that we are a work in progress. And that enlightenment is not an end destination. It is merely the beginning of the unfathomable reality with which we as human beings are seated. The supra-consciousness of the genius state that is seated into every one of us. So onto that supra-consciousness, onto that genius of divine presence, I welcome you to Sedona. I welcome your response. And I hope that this transition gives you confidence to make the changes that are needed, to drop the baggage of the past, to go where you know you are called to go, to do without hesitance the holy work that opens that gateway before you, that you too might pass through that golden needle of enlightenment in this lifetime. And the only thing that you need, oh my dear ones, is the pristine purity of selflessness. Selflessness. As all things are given, so too all things are received. The great paradox, it would seem, that as all things are given, as everything is given, everything is received. And you too shall bask. And the bright upon the bright of the genius of supraconsciousness that will be the boundless expanse of unity consciousness that leads our planet into the future, where we too once again join the higher civilizations of our universe. And our halls of wisdom, our great halls of sacred knowledge, are a place where our family of light from many stars and solar lodges regularly visit to share and herald. For this is a message, a promise, a prophecy, and a certainty that we will one day bask in 1,000 golden years of peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity for one and all. That is the divine plan. This completes my transmission of light, and yet the power of the blessing continues forever and ever in the unity everlasting. The unity everlasting is yours.